Hello and welcome. I am live from Pellam's Wasteland, and today I have another episode of Pellam's Wasteland Reads for you all, this time covering Nosferatu by Jim Shepard, which is a fictional account of the life of Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau, F.W. Murnau, who is a pioneering filmmaker of the Weimar era in the aftermath of the First World War. He was one of a collection of German filmmakers who did all these kind of really fascinating avant-garde things. I think about I'm a little bit more familiar with like Fritz Lang's movies than Murnau's, but it's a really, for people who are interested in the history of film, it is a really kind of fascinating experimental period, doing all these interesting things. And of course, his most famous movie is Nosferatu, a Symphony of Terrors, and that's the unlicensed version of Dracula that now has had. So there's the original Nosferatu from the 20s from Murnau, and then Werner Herzog did a Nosferatu remake in the 80s, and then obviously the newest version of Nosferatu from Robert Eggers from last year, year before. I don't remember precisely when, but much more recent. So all of these different versions, and that's kind of alongside all of the like Dracula adaptations and stuff. So this particular book is not just about the film Nosferatu, although it takes up a good chunk in the middle. The later sections of this book are largely about kind of the process of filmmaking and Murnau's life, and different kind of ways that he is approaching this idea of how to create something to be filmed. This artistic vision of this visionary character who spends the first quarter of the book suffering. He's a complicated, sensitive figure involved in the theater before film, has a tumultuous relationship with a young poet, and eventually the First World War breaks out, and all all of these things start to go wrong in Murnau's life. His boyfriend signs up for the war and is killed. Murnau himself ends up fighting in the war and ends up becoming part of the not the actual. It's not a true Air Force, but he is flying planes, right? Flying fighters for the German army. Small little biplanes, but also with like recon photography as part of what goes on there. And so there's the sort of the beginnings of his involvement with film in some ways are presented there, and in particular his what is presented in the book as his moment of enlightenment, this idea of looking at the world from the moving plane and essentially being in a perspective of a vision moving through space, and that this becomes foundational to not just his filmmaking but to cinema in general. This idea of movement, the kind of the artificial, the false imagery created by moving through images very quickly to suggest motion in the cinema, and that is kind of one aspect of movement, but that there's a sort of second level of this moving the camera while it is filming, and this becomes a kind of almost a white whale for Murnau, because these early cameras don't do that, right? The earliest film cameras are very fragile, and they cannot move through space, and so there's all these different things that he's coming up with in this kind of gradual rarefication of his process, understanding film, as he is working on this and is struggling to get investors to support his projects and working on all these different things and trying to convince people to believe in his art while his life is just falling apart around him, and he is so kind of completely overworked as he is making these movies, and they're these kind of fantastic wonderful imagery, but they don't really make that much money, and all these different things involved in his life of uh, this suffering, tortured, brilliant artist. And it's great. It's a fascinating, really exciting. I guess exciting is not. It's exciting if you care about these ideas of a tortured artist working hard to create something beautiful. And if you are looking for a book about vampires, or about Nosferatu or something more specifically, this may not be the one for you. But I liked it a lot. A little bit not at all the same kind of conceit, but in some level a little similar to a movie that I watched some time ago, Shadow of the Vampire, which is also about Murnau filming Nosferatu, except that in that one it's John Malkovich as F.W. Murnau, and then Willem Dafoe as Max Schreck, who is the real actor who plays Count Orlok in the original Nosferatu. But in Shadow of the Vampire, Max Schreck is this unknown actor who Murnau has found to play the villain of this piece. Um, and the sort of twist is that he might actually be a real vampire. And it's great movie, different take on kind of the concept of this driven, suffering artist who is committed to bringing something kind of beautiful and immense onto the film screen, but also quite good. So I would also recommend the movie Shadow of the Vampire if you are looking for Murnau stuff. But like I said, to bring it back to this book, a really wonderful and sad book about a complicated and difficult, reclusive man who is doing his best to create beautiful art, which is great, and fun to read. And I would recommend you check it out if the idea of a Weimar filmmaker trying to create these beautiful things and suffering sounds interesting to you. But otherwise, that is going to be it for me for today. So thank you for listening. If you have any comments or questions or whatever else, leave a comment down below. Otherwise, I've been live from Pellam's Wasteland, and I will see you next time. Take care, everybody.